What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Tavian's World of Reptiles. I hope you are all doing well and taking care of yourselves. I realize that I haven't been talking much about my blood python recently. I mean, I've had him in a video or two, but I haven't really just talked about him much, and I know I've gotten a lot of subscribers since I think the last time I really went into detail about him, so figured I would just go ahead and do a video on him real quick, and talk a little bit about how he came into my life, and a little bit about his temperament. So this is Rafiki, my blood python. I got him, I believe it was in August of 2017 at a reptile expo. The same day I got Shere Khan, my carpet python. And I did get him, even knowing that these guys have a bit of a bad reputation for being very defensive and hard to handle and manage because of their temperament. But I have personally had a reasonably good experience with Rafiki. He was a little bit, and naturally, he was a little bit defensive when I first got him home. But but the reality is, he just come from an expo, and he had driven several hours to get to wherever he came from to get to that expo. Been in a tight little thing all day. People look at him all day, and then we had a nice long 2-hour drive from that expo back to my house. Then another hour transit from that bus stop to my home. So he was out and transitioning for several hours. So it was not shocking that he was grumpy by that point. But overall, he settled down really well. However, blood pythons generally get a really bad rep for being super defensive and bitey and huffy. And I'm not going to lie, he's a bit huffy, which I'll show you in a minute when I originally touch him and pick him up. But he doesn't really strike too much at all. He's probably only struck, since I brought him home, he struck at me once, honestly. But he's a pretty great snake and a really wonderful species. I definitely want more people to give this species a chance, because they can be super rewarding. They're a huge, massive, chunky body snake. And even though he's huffy, see, he got a little huffy, kind of stuck up his body, but it wasn't even a bad huff either. It was just a light little huff. Light little huff. And he puffs up his body, shows me that he really doesn't like it, but he's not a volatile snake. The way that these people give this species such a bad rep, you would just think that the moment I opened this cage, he'd come flying out at me. But he really didn't. And the only reason I put him down is because, honestly, this snake is a big-bodied snake. I didn't put him down because I was worried about a bite or his huffing. I'm not worried about that at all. That's not a concern for me. I'm not worried about that. See, I'm not concerned. I put him down because I can't fully support him right now. Because this is a big, thick-bodied snake, they don't do really well with climbing. They're not really great climbers. They are meant to be on the ground. They are fully terrestrial snakes. They have got a big, chunky, thick body, especially as they get older, and wider than a ball python, stubby, long. It's longish. They can get up to 5 feet, but they're really thick-bodied snake. So they don't do climbing really well. And when you're holding them, you need to be giving them full-on support, literally fully supporting their body, because they don't have great climbing skills. So especially hanging them around your neck, you can when they're older, but that's just not the best support. So really just got to give them full-on support. So if I were to pick him up, I would need to have both of my hands on him to fully support his body so that he feels safe and secure. So I'm not doing that because I have my camera in my hand. But he is a fantastic species, definitely underrated. Honestly, their reputation just comes from, when they were originally brought into the hobby, there were a lot of wild-caught animals, and a lot of them, wild-caught animals are typically way more defensive. So these wild-caught ancestors had some pretty wild attitudes. They were not trying to come willingly, and because of that, now everybody just thinks that all blood pythons are just off their rocker crazy. But the reality is, many of these have been bred in captivity for a couple of generations now, and a lot of that hostility has been bred out of them, and they've calmed down a lot. So I really would love to see more people giving this species a chance, because I know they have a bad reputation because of their past, but this species species has come a long way. It's got a lot of captive bred animals now. You're not likely to find very many wild caught ones, and if you do, well, you're probably going to get a wild, pretty wild tempered animal. But a lot of the animals that you are finding in captivity are really tamed down, especially if you give them a lot of work and attention. Like any snake, when they're first born, they're pretty defensive, pretty wild. But if you give them a lot of love, a lot of attention, a lot of sense of security, a lot of positive reinforcement, then you can get an amazingly calm animal that you can have a wonderful time interacting with no worries. Would I say this is okay for a beginner? Yeah, I guess it depends on where you got your animal from, and how many generations in it is. They do get heavy bodied, but I don't think, they couldn't be handled by a beginner, maybe not a child, but I think with a lot of research and a lot of time dedicated to actually studying the animals for a while, I think a beginner could easily handle a blood python. Especially once you got dialing down with the humidity levels and how you do the husbandry care. Once you got that all dialed in, I think anybody could really handle a blood python because they don't get super long, even though they get thick bodied. It's just that temperament that really stops anybody from suggesting them as beginner animals. But like I said, I feel like if you find yourself a young enough specimen and you really work with it, you can actually have a really rewarding animal. And that's just my own personal opinion about it. Someone may lash at me for even suggesting that a beginner can handle this animal. I think my opinion of beginner animals is really subjective to each individual person and the animals that they're thinking about getting and the experience that they have and the research that they've done and all of that. So, my opinions when it comes to that, it's different from a lot of people. So I might suggest things that other people wouldn't. But anyway, not saying to go out and get a blood python as your first snake. Like I said, they can have a temperament, but also, they can be really rewarding animals, and I think any animal, even with a temperament, can be extremely rewarding animal to keep. One of my favorite things about this species, though, is that their bowel movements. They don't actually go very often. Like, they have such a slow metabolism that it is not uncommon for a blood python to go 6-9 months without pooping. That's just what it is before they just drop one big, long, large, solid load on you. It is not uncommon. So I guess that's one positive thing is substrate changes don't have to happen as much. I guess they do still urate a bit. He doesn't urate a lot, but he does still do that. But as for pooping, there is not a lot of that happens a year. Like I literally found one poop in a year since I've gotten him. So, and I haven't found any yet in. Yeah, I found one in 2019. So, yes, a year, one poop a year. So, I'm not sure when the next poop will going to be, but I'm looking forward to it, I guess. So, yeah, fun fact about the blood python. But, yeah, just really wanted to take a moment to showcase this beautiful animal. I have not talked about him in a while. I've definitely handled him a bit, but I've also gotten quite a lot of subs since then. So, I definitely want to give him some love and some attention and showcase him. And so, if there's anybody out there looking for a potential new species to get into or have thought about getting a blood python but have heard about that really ugly history that they have for being volatile, I suggest you look past that and get one and experience it for yourself because they've come a long way. I was really concerned about that, but I also really love that about snakes. I love snakes that are pretty wild and volatile. I love working with that particular species, and I'll do a video on that at a different time. But anyway, if you're thinking about getting a blood python, definitely give it a shot. Don't let the hype scare you off. They are not as bad as everybody tells you they are. There are worse tempered animals out there than the blood pythons, I tell you. And I've had a wonderful experience with my blood python. And I think anybody out there, if you find a good captive bred animal that's even maybe a couple generations in, you are going to have a fantastic, wonderful experience working with this animal and getting it to a tame and lovable state. So, but now I'm just starting to ramble again, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video for the day. You all take care, love yourselves, love your loved ones, love your reptiles, and you all keep spreading those herbs.